Hi there, today we're looking at painting this magnolia bud or magnolia flower. Beautiful, simple painting here, and we're just going to work through it step by step. For full details you can download the instructions off the site here, and also there is a trace down or drawing sheet to help you as well. Let's get going. Okay, we're going to do this beautiful magnolia flower today. Magnolias are some of the oldest flowers we've got in the world. They're one of the original dinosaur flowers, really. So very classical thing, and another sign of early summer, spring over here. So I've drawn it out. You can probably download the image of that and use it as your cheat sheet if you want to. But they are fairly strong shapes, so they're quite basic shapes to them. Keep your pencil lines very light because there's such a delicate colour to them. It's the purples and the very pale pinky colour, so it's quite a delicate. So make sure you don't do very heavy lines with that. You're going to use, it's mostly Elysian crimson, so it's quite a crimsony colour. So I'm going to mix up a very weak mix of the Elysian crimson. Then a stronger one, and just a tiny touch of ultramarine blue in it as well to make it just a little bit more purpley. Perhaps a little bit of a bluey grey colour as well for a bit of the shading in there, and perhaps a bit of yellow ochre as well for the inside of the petals, just to give the colours there. So I've got the colours just about ready here. Got this purpley colour over here. So mix your colours up first before you start. A little bit of the Elysian crimson on its own. I'm trying to find a clean bit on my palette to work from, which I've got a very grubby palette over here. A little bit of blue with a touch of burnt umber to it to make it a bit more of a bluey grey colour, to give it a bit of shading. Quite weak with that one. I'm going to add a bit of water to it. And just a little bit of yellow ochre or raw sienna, one of the two. So what we're going to do is taking one petal at a time with this. Flowers, you have to work every other petal. You can't work on the whole flower in one go. So you just take every other petal and just gradually add in some of the colours to them. So taking this one petal here, and we look at this is an outside petal. So we're just going to put the wetting it all over, and then just put a little bit of the colouring into it. So I'm taking the puddle out of it. I'm only wetting it with a small round brush. This is about a 6 or an 8 round, and just taking the puddle out again so it just stays damp but not soaking wet this time. It's controlling how wet this is. And then we're going to just pop in perhaps a little bit of the shady to the one side of it. So perhaps put a little bit of the bluey grey into the one side of that petal. A little bit strong on that, so I'm just going to wet my brush and fade it out a little bit. So it's just putting a little bit of the shadow in, perhaps a little touch of the very weak Elysian crimson into it now, into that shadowy colour as well, just to take the edge off that. And again, I'm just controlling how much water's on that petal, just taking it out again, and then going in with a stronger Elysian crimson with a touch of ultramarine blue to it. So adding that in, giving those streaks and the form of the flower as it comes up there. It's got a darker one right in the centre there to give you the shape of that. So that's one petal done. Just drying my brush and taking any fuzzy bits out of that. Can't work on any of those petals now because this one's wet. But I'll have to go over and work on a different flower. So I'll do the same again on this one, just gradually working around these petals. Oops. Should be clean water, not grubby water as I just did there. Clean water, dampening it all over, just working round there. Dampening that right down to the base here. Making sure it's staying slightly damp, looking to see where the shadowy bits are. There's a little bit of a hollow in here, so it's going to be a little bit more shady underneath that side of it there. So it's just putting the little shadow in and some folds and creases down the bottom there. A little bit of the pale pink colour, Elysian crimson, over the rest of it. Don't be frightened of leaving white areas in here, so you can actually leave the tips to go back to being quite white. and then the stronger purpley alizarin crimson with a touch of ultramarine blue in towards the base. It's quite a little seam that goes up the side of those, follows the shape of that petal around there and then up into the flower. So a few little streaks with that, giving you the form of the, oops, just wobbled. Okay, I've wobbled, so let's just make that a little bit bigger on that edge. How to rescue it when you go over the lines there, just make your flower petal a little bit larger. That's another petal done. Again, I can't do those two because they're touching it. I could probably do that inside one. The inside one's a little bit more creamy coloured, just the inside of the flower here. So again, clean brush, not a grubby brush. Just take that pink out because I wanted a creamy colour. So just wetting that inside of that petal. It's the inside one, and it's got a little bit of grey shadow in towards the centre. So it's in towards the centre and then bringing that out there, and then I'm just going to put in just a touch of the yellow ochre. That's not yellow ochre, that is a little bit too strong there. That's more cadmium yellow. And bring that into that so I can see what I'm doing there. A bit of the yellow ochre around the edge of that. Yeah, that's a bit more creamy there. Let's put a little bit more shading just under that top edge, just to give me the shape of the inside of that a little bit more. So I'm putting paint in and lifting it out. Because it's Bockingford paper, it tends to stay wet for quite a time, so you can actually model a little bit more easily with that than you can with some other papers. So now these are all wet, can't do any of those, so I'll move on to my other flower and do the same sort of thing there, just gradually building up these petals one at a time, just wetting one all over, adding a little bit of shadow into it, or you can add the colour first, a little bit of the pinky shade to it. I might put a little bit of yellow ochre into that as well, because it's just got a little bit yellow. It's a bit older, so it changes just colour on the tip here, getting a little bit more yellowy, and then a little bit more of the pinky colour down the side of it, just very pale. A little bit of the shadow where it tends to curl underneath, blending that in, and then the markings on it, which are quite strong purpley colour, gradually building that up into there. Just bring that one of those up as well. So you get into the swing of it, you're just gradually working around one at a time. Let's do this one because I can't do those. I can do that one here. Same sort of thing. I'll do a few more if you want to come catch up with me in a few minutes, and we'll just do a few more in a little while. So I'm just gradually working around these, building them up as we go along. So you can see I'm just working in between some of them now. So gradually getting more and more petals put in here. So same sort of thing with these. You can't. I've just done those two and that one. I put in after these two were dry. So now I can perhaps put this one in. This is a background one, so it's a little bit of dampening all over, and then we'll put a little bit of yellow ochre to the top edge to it. So you can see inside there it's a little bit more yellowy, a little bit of pink as well, a little bit of the alizarin crimson in there into the centre, and then we'll put a bit of the shadowy grey in into the middle of that as well to give it a bit of depth in there, and just blend that out while it's still wet. You have to keep this damp all over so the colours blend in and merge. So again, those are all, that's all wet. Oh, we could do this little one here. That's an inside and an outside one, so we'll do the inside bit first. I think that's dry now. Inside bit on that one first of all, while we've got those colours there, a little bit of the yellow ochre onto the tip, a little bit of the pinky colour, the weaker alizarin crimson. I'll probably just leave that without any more shading into it than that. Oh, I don't know, I might put a little bit of shading, yeah, just into that little hollow in there. Okay, so I'll work back on these. This is an outside petal, but it's curling inwards. So we're just dampening that over and just having a look at where the shadows are and where the colouring is. You've got a little bit of yellow ochre on the sides of it as well. Just towards the tip of that. So they go a little bit more yellowy as they get older. And then it'll have a little bit of grey to the sides where it's tucking in behind the other petals. And then we'll put this strong dark pinky purple coming up from the, following the curve of that petal. In, and it's just hopefully making it look like the little petals curling up that way. A few more bits. I'll probably just do another couple more on this one. There's only these few little bits to do and one more on there, so I'll just finish these off. Just dampening. It should be clean water. I've used grubby water again, but never mind. I'm sure we'll lose it in a moment. And then just a little bit of yellow on the tips there. And then a little bit of pale pink. And then some darker pinky purpley from the base, curling round. It goes up the centre of that petal, disappears behind that petal. There's a few little streaks of that. So I'm constantly altering the dampness of this paper by either drying my brush or putting a little bit more water on, or drying it out on my bit of tissue, just to control how the paint flows. So let them blend in together. I think that needs to be just a fraction stronger towards the bottom here to make it look like it's tucking in. And just timing really with this, just making it sure you don't keep going into it once it's dry. Just the last little bit round here. Oop, clean water. This is another inside one, so we won't put any purple on this one. We'll just have a little bit of colour into that. Again, a little bit of yellow ochre onto the tip. It's not really botanical painting, it's more an impression of what's there. If it was a botanical painting, I'll be do detailed drawing first and then really build it up. And a lot more time over it than I'm doing here. It's just trying to get the impression of the colours that I can see there and where the lights and darks are without all the details and all the veins and everything that's on every petal. A little bit of shading into that, and then a little bit into the hollow in the middle there. Just one more. Oh, I've got the outside of that one to do. Just dampen that. And it's almost white on the outside edge, but I'll just have that pinky purpley bit coming up on that bit. Going back to being white towards the top there. A little bit stronger on that bottom edge. And just this little petal up the top here, and then we can start to look at leaves and stems. Bit of yellow ochre. And then a bit of pink. Pinky purpley in for that one. And there we have it. Most of the little flowers are done. So when you think you've finished the flowers, just have a look at them and make sure that you can see some separate petals here, that the one stands out from against another. You may need to re-wet one or two to make things a little bit darker, and then put some more colour in. They're pretty much there. I think possibly, wait until that, I think that one over here might need to just be dampened and just a little bit more dark purple, pinky purple put into that. So if I want to put some more colour into it, I have to re-wet the whole petal, just flick the water over it so it doesn't disturb the colour that I've already got there. And then I can put in a little bit more colour, a little bit more red into that, just in some places. So if you want to increase the colour, you have to wait until it's dry, then re-wet it again, and then just tickle in a little bit more colour where you think you need it. So I think the rest should be all right for that. Okay, let's have a look at doing some leaves and some stems onto this now then. We're going to use a sort of yellowy colour. It's quite a bright colour, lemon yellow, and a touch of ultramarine blue to make a green, and also a stronger bluey green as well, and perhaps even a bit of shadowy colour into it. So we're going to keep these quite light and bright. So you've got a little bit of a part where it joins the stem there, but there's little leaves by the side of it. So I'm just going to dampen that. A little bit of the lemon yellow onto that one, and then a little bit of the greeny colour onto that as well to get some variation in that leaf there. Same with these. Just mix up a bit more green over here. So I'm going to do two at once now without the aid of a safety net. So I'm just doing a little bit of that colouring onto it, touch of the lemon yellow onto the tops of those, and then a bit of the bluey green into the bottom edge there. It needs to be a little bit stronger on that one. And the same on this one here. Just have those little bits onto this one, onto that. So again, just get those greens to vary, because it stops it looking flat and static if you get some different shades into it. And these little lumps here, now that's dry, we can do this one. You probably want some ultramarine blue and burnt umber as well into that, so a little bit of the, wet that area, and we'll have a little bit of the bluey green colour, ultramarine blue, and cadmium yellow I think for that one. Gives you the green bit that's on the bottom there, and then add a little bit of that bluey grey colour into the bottom edge to make it look a bit more rounded. That blends with the greens as well to give it a bit of shape. Same on this one, just wet it and then add in a bit of the greens and a bit of bluey grey to it underneath. That's those done. So now we've just got to put this stem on. The stem is a lovely big chunky stem. It has a few little buds and things sticking out the side of it. We're going to use burnt umber and ultramarine blue. Keep it a little bit more browny than I'd normally have that mix. A couple of different shades of that if you can, some a little bit stronger than others. So when we can alter that just very slightly as we add the colours in there. So I've got two little puddles of that mixed up. One just fractions stronger than the other, and one a little weaker than the other. So now we're just going to do part of this little branch one bit at a time. We're just wetting down that branch and into any little buds and things which have to be on the sides of it there. So just wet down there while that's still wet. If I just drop this colour in, this browny grey colour, just to the bottom, round the top then, just to the bottom edge, just let it bleed back up again of its own accord. So you're putting the colour in darker at the bottom and just let it go up and round the stem so it tends to be lighter at the top and darker at the bottom there, leave it so it's quite knobbly and chunky, and then just flick it around those little buds that we're putting on there. I'll do the next bit, just wetting down that stem, thinking light to one side, dark to the other. So again, I'm just going to dribble that paint down the one side here, perhaps putting a little bud or two on. They should be slightly more greeny colour, but keeping it darker to the one side and lighter to the other. So just to help with that particular one, I'm just going to get that little bit of the stronger colour and just drop that into the right hand side a little bit more in some places, not everywhere. You can let it go a little bit knobbly so it looks a bit more uneven. Which one should I do? This one next. So straight down here, wetting that bit of stem so it stays wet. It's all about just controlling that water so it stays glossy wet so the colours merge into each other. And then we're just going to tickle that paint, a bit more brown into it I think, tickle that paint along the bottom edge there and just let it run back up naturally. So it just changes that shade, it gets lighter towards the top, just encourage it to go back up into that water. A few little buds as I go, just these little bits sticking out there. So go down here, just dragging that along. And then a little bit of extra dark on that bottom edge in some places, not everywhere, just here and there, so let it, and we'll just fade it out at the end there so it disappears to nothing at the end, so it doesn't end suddenly as a sharp bit. Last little bit to go, and that's this bit here. Just let that join into the other part, wet it first and just tickle a bit of the dark browny grey colour. And join it in with this stem, which we've just painted there. Little bits of extra dark here and there. And that's about it.